All right, so now we're talking about how to care for these large animals, and it does take a lot of work. Rule of thumb: larger the animal, larger amount of work. A horse is going to take a lot more work than a weenie dog, right? Okay, so really, we're just going to go over some main things, just some broad things. Each animal's specific to their needs, but we'll just cover them broadly. So water is the number one non-essential or number one essential nutrient for animals. So water has to be provided. It's got to be accessible all day, every day for animals. Um, just like us, they can't go 3 days without water. It needs to be clean. Okay, animals are not the brightest, right? So they may go to the bathroom in their water. If they poop in their water, that could spread bacteria called coccidiosis. They drink that water, and those animals could get coccidiosis. Now, you can treat coccidiosis pretty easily with Corid, um, but if it's untreated, that animal could die. So that's why it's so important that animals need to be have accessible fresh water. So it says sheep require around 3 gallons a day, cattle 14 gallons a day per animal. That's a lot of water. That's why most people have those big old troughs for cattle, or they're out with a pond. Access to clean water reduces parasite infections. That helps protect environment and produce healthier animals. This is not frozen. Well, obviously, if it's frozen, those animals will not drink it. So just make sure they've got clean water readily available. Step 2, shelter. They need somewhere to get out of the elements, okay, especially in the winter. If you can't have a barn, at least have some way for them to get out of the wind. So it says like a 3-sided shelter. You're mainly wanting to shield them from the north. Remember, all the cold is going to come from the north. North wind is brutal in the winter. That's what we're going to block them. Some people, if they have big ranches, they may not have a barn. But if they have a lot of trees, those animals will go on the south side of those trees, blocking the north wind, and that will suffice. For smaller animals, goats, they're going to need a little bit better shelter. Goats and sheep, they also may need protection from predators. They're real susceptible to coyotes. We have guard dogs that we keep, and they're Great Pyrenees and Anatolian Shepherd, and they live with the goats, and they help protect them at night. So with cattle, you don't really need this because they're big enough. Coyotes are going to mess with them, but smaller animals for sure. Feeding. Okay, it's important to provide these animals nutrients. Okay, just like you need food to live, so do animals. That's one of the most frustrating parts of dealing with people and animals. Is sometimes people don't feed the animals. They just can't take the responsibility. If you're going to have these animals, you better be prepared to feed them. So for ruminant animals, like we talked about, so that's your cattle, goats, sheep, forage feeding, including pasture, silage, and hay, so that's grass products, is the healthiest choice. Pasture feeding is most economical, so it's cheaper if you have plenty of room for them to feed. However, in the winter, what doesn't grow? Grass. So that's when you're going to have to deal with hay. So cattle graze on good pasture. They usually don't need any additional supplements, especially in the summertime whenever grass is really healthy. But in the winter, they're going to need some sort of supplements. They'll need some mineral available. You may have to feed them. You may have to give them hay. But they're going to need some sort of roughage. And in the winter, or if you're like us, we breed so that cattle are pregnant through the winter. So we give them some feed to help support the new baby and help to keep them healthy. So the feed that they're going to eat are going to be made of grain like corn, wheat, or oats, high in carbs, keep them full and sufficient while they burn all that energy trying to stay warm. So silage was one of the options. If you've ever driven by and you've seen like a pile in a farm and it's got white, like looks like trash bag over it with tires on it, that is silage being formed. So silage is grass that they take and they basically ferment it. Okay, so it stays under this heavy tarp, gets really hot, and it becomes fermented, and it's a little bit higher protein um, for these animals. So sheep do well on pasture. They eat a lot of grass. You need to provide them mineral and salt, and you can feed them hay in the wintertime. Same as cattle, give them grain um, when needed. So pregnant, lactating mothers, it's a good choice to give them some grain. Goats, they don't really graze grass. They kind of eat all the stuff that you would be amazed that they'd eat. Okay, so goats are gonna eat. I've seen a goat eat poison ivy. I've seen a goat eat a thistle. They're browsers, so they prefer brush and trees as a food source. I've seen a goat leave a perfectly like beautiful looking grass, and they will go eat the bark off a cedar tree. So that's just what they like. So, depending on what's available, maybe supplement them a little bit. But goats are pretty easy um, to feed. You can give them vegetable scraps; they'll eat it. Um, like we save old spinach or um, like even banana peels and stuff. The goats love them. Feeding pigs. So pigs, they typically feed a grain based with additional protein. So grain's cheaper than meat, even though the pigs are omnivores. They're going to feed them more of a grain based diet just because it's cheaper and more economical. They can have kitchen scraps. Like if you've ever seen Charlotte's Web, slop, that's what kitchen scraps is, and pigs love it.